Hi, I'm Don Sundman, and I'm going to tell a story about some rare stamps that were stolen and recovered and my role in part of the story. And so in 1955, wealthy collector Edith McCoy owned a block of inverted Jennies, and she would exhibit them at American Philatelic Society stamp shows. And at the 1955 show, the block was stolen. At some point before she died, Edith McCoy willed her ownership interest in the stamps to the American Philatelic Society if they were ever recovered. So anyways, the stamps were stolen in 55. In 58, one of the stamps showed up in Chicago with a stamp dealer named Louis Castelli. And he owned the stamp, and then 20 years later, he tried to sell it to the Wheel brothers in New Orleans, the famous rare stamp dealers. And they recognized it and turned it over to the FBI. And the FBI returned the stamp to the APS, and they auctioned it in 1981 for $115,000, and that's this stamp. So shortly after, a second stamp was found also in Chicago, also in the late 70s. And that stamp was seized, or it was actually given to the American Philatelic Society. And the American Philatelic Society at stamp shows would put up a display, and they would show their stamp, which they called the Real McCoy, and a fake inverted Jenny. And they would challenge viewers to guess which was the correct one, see if you could identify it. And so that was great fun. Anyways, the case went dormant. And then in 2015, 14, Rob Hassler at the APS had the idea of offering a large reward to get media attention, and that might uncover the two stamps, which would come to the APS, and it'd be news about the hobby, which we always love. Stamp collectors love to see stories about stamp collecting in a positive light. So anyways, Rob and Roger Brody, who was a volunteer on the board of the APS, asked if I would put up a $100,000 reward for these two stamps. I knew Roger because we were both on the board at the National Postal Museum. And so I said, well, that's an interesting idea and really cool, but what do I get if I put up the reward? And he goes, well, nothing, actually. And that, maybe you'd get some publicity. And I thought, I don't know. And then I thought about it more, and the idea appealed to me, and I thought nobody else is going to put up the money. It's a lot of money, and maybe the stamp will never be found. So I agreed, but I said I don't want to have it be forever. There should be a time limit. I didn't want my kids to have to pay the reward after I'm long gone. So we agreed. They suggested the New York International Stamp Show in 2016 that the reward run through that, and I thought that's a great idea. So time goes on. The story made it in the press, and New York Times talked about it, and there's a brief flurry of activity, and people called me thinking they had the stamp, but they didn't, and then nothing happened. And I kind of forgot about it. And then this is where the story gets weird. In the spring of 2016, Keelan ONeal shows up with this stamp, the inverted Jenny. And he said that his grandfather had passed away had given it to Keelan in 2011, a few months before he passed away in Northern Ireland. So Keelan kept the stamp, and he thought it might have value, so he eventually took it to a stamp auction firm in London, and they said, oh, take it to our New York office, and they'll tell you if it's genuine and if it has any value. So he was coming to the US in 2016, so he flew over with the stamp, and he takes them the stamp, and they go, oh, we don't know whether it's genuine or whatever. So the auction firm took it to the Philatelic Foundation, the nonprofit group that expertises stamps. And the experts at the Philatelic Foundation realized it was genuine, and they also realized it was one of these missing McCoy stamps, a stolen stamp. So they contacted, the Philatelic Foundation contacted the FBI and also told the APS that this stamp had showed up. So the FBI talked to Keelan, and they're trying to figure out, did he have anything to do with the theft or whatever, and realized he did not. So all this was happening just a few weeks before my reward was going to expire, and I had no idea. And then the APS called me and said, "You won't believe this, that this stamp has shown up, and it's exciting, and the Philatelic Foundation has said it's genuine, and so we're going to announce it." And I thought, oh, that was terrific. Isn't that great? It'll be great publicity for the stamp show. And then the weird thing is everybody wanted my $50,000 reward. The auction company that didn't even know what the stamp was, they told the APS they deserved the reward. I couldn't believe the nerve that they had. But money makes people do funny things. And then the Philatelic Foundation, they thought they should get the $50,000 because they're the ones that actually identified it. And there's a little bit of logic to that, but I felt the young man deserved the money. It's really, if it wasn't for him, the stamp wouldn't be unknown and may have been destroyed. So at the stamp show, there's a ceremony. Everybody wanted to have their picture taken, U.S. federal marshals and the FBI, and a lot of other people. And I was there too, along with Roger Brody in Keelan. And I have this big blow-up check for $50,000 and gave it to him. And so it was kind of a nice ending for it, for the story. So then a little bit after, I was talking with the APS, and they said, "Oh, why don't you renew the reward for the extra stamp, the missing stamp?" And I said, well, our reward had nothing to do with the stamp actually being found. And I said, I think I don't think it'll make any difference. And so I gave the APS the $50,000, and I said, if you want to offer the reward, do it, but I think you should just keep the money. And I think that's what they did. The funny thing is there's still a missing stamp. And so I had a phone call several years ago about the missing stamp, and somebody called me up and said, I know where it is and who has it. And very cagey and wouldn't give much information. And so I asked him, I said, how do you know? And he goes, I know it's somebody who was an APS employee that stole it. And I said, how do you know that? That's just amazing. And he said, I'm psychic and I know these things. So just another weird, fun story about stamps. And happy collecting. Have a great day. Thank you.